Okay, we are back with another slightly more advanced technique. For this, I'm going to try and sculpt a couple of different structures into this, a drainage channel and some sort of drain cover. For that, I've done a very simple. I've got a old Biro, I've taken the cap off, I've cleaned up the plastic end a little bit, just trying to make it a bit rounder. I've got the metal lid, and the bit I really wanted to see in the inside bit. So this is going to be used for the drainage channel. Drainage channel will be drawn along here, so we need to make a slab that's a little wider than this. So first job is just poke this down there like that and get a straight line. You can already start to see the drainage channel being created. I'm going to widen that by putting a line in about there, not wet enough, and another one about the same distance on this side, just about there. All the way down that. Make sure those lines are nice and deep. Unfortunately, I have a bit of older cured green stuff just here. It's making it a bit messy, but it'll be fine. I'm going to get back to the pencil again. The pen centre, and I'm going to take it along there, make sure it's lined up again, and I'm going to push it in relatively firmly to make a bit of a deeper channel. There we go, I've just made a mess of that. Typical, there we go. Get it nice and wet. Rub it up and down a bit, there we go, we're starting to get a bit of a drainage channel there. Not sure this is going to work as well as I've done in the past. I've previously used a very small piece of plastic. This pen inside is a little wider, but I've done this a few years ago on some bases. I think it was for Infinity at the time, something like that. So that's it. And the key bit is getting these bits flattened off, and I'll sharpen the edges on this top side and this bottom side. So I realise I'm not even in the centre there. I'll pull this back across. There we go, just sharpen these edges up a little bit. And then we'll add break in it somewhere, maybe there. So it cuts across both sides. Let's have these as some sort of cast flag, ceramic or carved drainage channel, something like that. So we'll just tie that up, clean either side up, push these corners in a little bit, tidy that up there. And that's looking pretty good. So the hardest bit of doing these is making sure you don't really mess with this centre line at all. If you mess with that, it can be quite hard to fix it again. But these edges are dead easy to play around with. And again, because it's a nice old city, we'll do the same again. We'll add a bit of texture to it, try not to get too close to the centre there. Just start seeing that texture appearing there. Just all the way down like this. And the same with the other side, just tap this a few times. Then we'll just sharpen this line up a little bit, just nudge it inwards. So what we're doing is pushing this way, very, very gently, just touching it in. If we keep pushing downwards, it'll cause these sides to bow upwards a little bit and it becomes rounded. But if we can, now we've got a little bit more space, we just slide the sculpting tool in and just tap it sideways. I'll cut that one a little bit because I didn't get both sides wet. Just try and make the shoulders nice and sharp, making it look as much like a stone slab as possible. Now, whilst you can sculpt loads of detail on the base, I find it's generally, think about it, your model's going to sit somewhere, so your model's feet might be here and here, over this side a bit. So if we cover the base in detail, we're going to miss it all, and it'll look no good. So what we're going to do for the rest of the base is just carve a very simple random stone pattern in again, like we did on the previous bases. Just flatten all this off a bit, get that sharpen up a bit. And we'll just put some slabs in, so a line down that way, try and make it 90 degrees away. We'll come this way. Make these regular slabs, shall we? So like that. Line that way, line that way, and one that way. And then, as I've done before, just going to deepen these up like this. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of dried green stuff just under there. That's a slight mistake of mine. Should have picked that out when I was prepping the base before. But this is essentially quite often what I do with leftover green stuff. If I've finished another project, I'll just stick some on a base, have a brown with it. If I've only got half a base, I'll sculpt half a base of tiles. I have to make things like tentacles and cables and stuff like that. Things that are just useful to have kicking around for when you want to do some other work and you need a bit of detail for something, or you want to have some extra bases in stock. They don't have to be for a specific game unless you're starting to add skulls and cabling and electronics to it, and obviously things make it modern or sci-fi. You know, most of the world these days, there's examples of regular tiles and irregular tile patterns. You know, old towns, cities, modern cities will have a much more regular squared pattern. But obviously, if you're doing post-apocalyptic or future, it's quite easy to damage these up, just smash them around a bit, make them all a bit messy. If you're doing a fantasy world, then obviously they're going to be less well cast. They're unlikely to be really square edged, especially if it's an area that gets a lot of use. So again, battle damage, messing around with it, things like this where I've made a bit of a muck up, it really isn't going to make a slightest bit of difference once I've painted it up. And obviously bear in mind there's also going to be a miniature on top of this, so some of this space will be taken up by the miniature, it'll be in shadow. So the main bit is we're giving it an impression of something rather than a really fantastic clear representation of a tiled street or a flagged street. This is about making your bases a little bit better, not necessarily making them absolute masterpieces. Again, I'm just dabbing across, getting a bit of texture on these, making them a little less flat and like I just smoothed over some green stuff. There we go, just to clean this up a bit. That's looking pretty good. I'm sorry for the glare today. I need to find a bit of a filter for my overhead light, and so it's catching the off the green stuff because green stuff's slightly shiny. I'm just going to much the same again. I'm going to just put a couple of nicks in these here and there, make it a bit messier. I think around this bit here again, when I get the some super glue and some gravel out for this base later, I'll possibly put a little bit around here just to clean that up a little bit. You can sometimes get away with making it damaged, but again, the more texture you put on your base, often more interesting it can be. So don't be afraid to sculpt a bit, chuck some other materials on, find stuff from your Bix box and just build it in. I always keep random shapes and random bits from a Bix box, especially if I'm doing kind of sci-fi bases for 140,000 or for Infinity or something like that. Some bolt cartridges, some random magazine cases, just drop them in the corner. You just got to be aware of where you think you're going to put some of your models, because obviously if you're going to put your model's feet somewhere, you don't want to be standing on great big bulky items that are stuck on top of the base. If it's resin models, you want to be able to drill into the base, especially ones that haven't got slot base and stuff. This technique does kind of work with slot bases. It becomes a little more difficult because you've got to work around the slot and the figure's feet, so it's a bit harder to roll it out. So you'll find yourself having to do a little bit more work to flatten out the base and allow the area around the feet to stay kind of undisturbed. So I generally do try and make my figures, I make my bases before sticking figures on. And if I do stick figures on, I generally don't do sculpted bases. I'll do gravel and texture material and grass bases. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That'll do for now. And you've got a, again, different drainage channel in a base. There we go. That should look pretty cool when a figure's stuck on it. There we go. Right, I'm back for the other part of this, as I'd not recorded it earlier. We're going to use these two other bits of pen here, the nib of the pen and the other pen. I've already got a sculpted base here. All these outer panels, I've already done all the detailing on. See, I've got a bit of mucky, pre-cured hard bit there, which I can't do much about. It's fine, it'll disappear at some point. Try to stick someone's foot over it. I've left this panel here pretty much unadorned. I've not done any of the normal detailing and texturing on it yet. We're going to make some sort of sewer grate on this using the pen. So just a quick clean up around here of this. So essentially what you want is two circles that will fit inside each other. So one large, one small. This is your large one. This one will produce a smaller one. I'm going to stamp a little hole in here, and we'll stamp an inner hole, and then we'll tidy it up and make it appear a bit more like a sewer. This is a little thick. I've had a poke around my bits box. I couldn't really find another pen cap that's got a slimmer edge than this. Have a quick look at what this end's like. No, this end's fairly... No, it might work. Let's look at that. Is that about the same size as that? It's the same size diameter in a circle. That might work. So I'll just grab a pen. So what I'm going to do is take all this extra plastic off here very quickly. That's a bit better. This one will probably work better actually. There we go. Sorry about that. So there you go, a nice round shape there. That's what we're after. So what we need to do is make sure it's nice and wet on the end, and then we're going to stamp just in. I'm going to do it as centrally as possible, round about there. There. So it's not awful. Don't want to twist it, you just want to push down till we hit the base. There we go. So nice and deep. That's not bad at all. Then we're going to get the other end of this same pen. I'm hoping this will fit. Oh, it's going to be a tight on this one. It's going to be a bit too tight. We'll see if this works tonight. Let's have a look. I can fit it right in the centre of this one. It's probably the hardest bit. We're trying to make essentially an edge piece and an inner piece. That's not awful. A little bit wider than I like. So, back to the sculpting tool. First of all, we're going to just push this out and soften it, square it off a little bit. Push this round like that. You've already seen we've got quite a nice ring for the edge. Now this we're going to divide into 3 sections. One there, one there, one there. So I'm just slowly work into this. Don't push too hard. Don't try and do it all at once, because you'll end up just flattening the whole bit and have to start again. But we just need to very carefully push the blade through to the bottom. Separate a section off there. Same again here. Just try not to push it too far out that way. A little bit of room to play with, but not a lot. So just push that way. There we go, and the last one across there, like that. Just work your way into it. Thankfully I haven't got any other cured PVA, Greenstuff under this, so it's not causing me any massive issues there. So that's the basic shape of it, and then we're just going to flatten this off using kind of dished end and that. It's not the best, this one. I've not quite divided them equally. You can do them as equally as possible. It looks a little bit better. And obviously you need to get the two holes as level as possible, so that the outer circle is kind of even all the way around. Don't brush back and forward as I just did then, as I've already started twisting some of these into non-straight bits, but I'll try and square that up a little bit and then just straighten them. Lines running back and forward. This stuff requires a relatively steady hand, but it's not too bad. My hands are getting a little shaky, so it just takes a little bit of concentration, a bit of care. There we go, that's a sewer grate and a thing, and then we'll just, around the side of it, we'll just detail up now. Like this. Get these two, maybe a nick in there perhaps, just yeah, not an utterly square edge. So there you go. You can find loads of useful household objects, basically anything that's circular, square, oblong, just pretty small. You're looking at, you know, this is only 5-6 millimeters across, mine's probably 4 across. So pretty small items. I use quite a lot of this kind of stuff. So plastic tubing bought from modern railway shops. You can use it as it is, just cut it, slice it across, make sure you've got a nice clean edge on it. You can squish it together, try and make oval shapes. Here, this one's quite a thick one, so it's a bit harder to do. I've got some thinner stuff. If you can get this square tubing, that's really useful as well. There's a whole host of different tubes are really good for making just random shapes and patterns in it. But there you go, it's a pretty simple technique just to do some sort of sewer grate. I've run out of green stuff on this one, so I'm just going to fill these little bits when it's dry with some super glue and pour some sand in. Yeah, it's relatively simple. I find when you're doing stuff where you want to kind of fill it up to the top, super glue is a little better than PVA. PVA, when you pour it in and put sand on top, it'll look the same, but it will contract downwards and you'll get a little kind of bowl shape, whereas I find super glue will literally sit there and you can fill it right up to the top and get it pretty much even. And normally I use a kind of mixed grade sand, so I'll have some bigger chunks in there and it looks quite good as kind of rubble. There we go. Okay, that's enough of this one. I've got another technique just coming up, so bear with us for 2 moments. So, another base here, another bunch of putty, and we're going to try to make a patterned set of tiles. I might do a 2-level one, so I'll record a bit of it now, let the putty dry, and come back a little later to do some more. So, I generally try and build up my green stuff in layers. Let one layer fully cure, then build another. I don't really like working on existing damp green stuff. I find it's far too easy to mess up using a gun. I've actually got a little lump of, there we go, cured yellow there. This is unfortunate. I've got slightly older green stuff today. But again, this is my kind of cedary green stuff. It's not my good stuff. It's just the stuff I use for filling gaps in bases and stuff like that. So again, wet the top of the green stuff, take a round pencil and just roll it across like a rolling pin. Push it right to the edges. Try and get this as level as possible, picking up on the lip of the base. Obviously, if you're not using lipped bases, then you're going to have to be more careful. Try and just roll it into a very even layer. I might do another tutorial kind of video for that sort of thing. There we go. And I'm just going to clean this edge here all the way around, nice and quickly. Yeah, that's pretty good. We've got like 0.5 millimetre if that high at the moment, so I can probably just take a little bit off here and smooth it out later. I've noticed this was unfortunately a base with a slot in it. I couldn't find any flat ones, so the putty here is starting to just slip into the crack a little bit, but we'll sort that out as we sculpt. I found it's not an insurmountable problem. There's a couple of different ways of dealing with it. Either you make that part of your pattern, which I think I might actually do today because it's a nice straight line. So we'll have one of the pattern lines coming down here. The other way is you just go into the bottom of your base and you push the putty back up. So you just sort of push this putty up here and that will even the layer out a little bit. And should get rid of most of that. So looking at this now, there we go, clean up. These bits on the edge, it looks a bit scruffy at the moment. It's fine, I usually leave these to dry and then just scrape them off when it's dry putty. I find it sticks a little bit normally when it's wet. So any extra bits, don't worry about them too much, we'll clean them up later. Right, okay, so we want a pattern. What I think I'm going to do, I'm going to try and do a 2-layer base. So I'll sculpt the first layer now. So we're going to line about here. We'll raise this bit up 0.5 centimetre maybe 3 or 4 millimetres, and do some more tiling on this side, and we'll leave this side flat. So we'll take our line straight across there like that. Nice and easy. There we go. That's, unfortunately, just missed that bit, so I'll try and smooth it out a little bit. But we can chuck some extra detailing on it later on. If I'm feeling particularly lazy, I'll just drop some super glue and a little bit of gravel onto it, something like that. Okay, so we should have, obviously you can do a fairly square pattern, so just carving lines this way, lines that way. That's pretty easy, fairly standard. We could try doing a bit of a thinner line of paving slabs and then a pattern on this side. I think we'll do that. So first job is going to do a parallel line ring. It's only about 2 or 3 millimetres next to the original one. Just down here. Straight down like that. There we go. Now there's a couple of different ways of doing your diagonal flags. So either we can guess, which I'm going to do today, or you can kind of measure. I get a ruler, just mark off kind of 0.5 centimetres dots across here, and then do the lines 0.5 centimetre across. But for today, for speed, I'm just going to try and take a line. So that's 90 degrees, one about 45 degrees off here, like that. Now I reckon the tiles want to be about this wide, so we'll take another line this way. And another one about there. And the last one, just squeeze one more line on there. They look pretty evenly spaced. Just clean these lines up a little bit. Do best to keep this central so you can see it nice and clearly. And then we're going to do the same the other way. So we want a 45-degree angle, so that's 90, go to 45, probably there-ish. That's not looking very diamond shaped though. Probably there. Yeah, we'll start there, do it that way. That looks about right. This one wants to be about there-ish. And there. And this one will have to come from that corner about there. We're a little bit off on that line, that's fine. I'll just try and drive it a bit deeper. As you're working deeper, you can generally wriggle your line a little bit. Either way, it's got a little bit of playroom. Again, the main bit of this is trying to get the lines parallel and neat, and then we can do cleanup exercises later. And we can add damage and extra detail and stuff like that just to sort out anywhere where we've made a bit of a mistake. So I think that looks relatively even. So again, I'm just going to deepen all of these lines there and there, and there. I'm going to again flip to the other side of this, and I'm just going to start pushing this back down a little bit where it's bulged in the centre, pushing back out into the slabs, try and square those edges off a little bit, taking my fingerprints off. I've left fingerprints on them. The benefit of doing these sorts of bases, and for a game like Carnivale and Malifaux or anything like that, generally the worlds they're in are not nice, neat, square worlds. They're a little bit dirty, a little bit mucky, a little bit ramshackle, which is brilliant. It's the age-old, what do you do when you've broken something or made a bit of a mess of something? You turn it to battle damage. And we can do pretty much the same here. So where there's lines with mist or double cut, we'll turn some areas around that into a bit of damage and wreck it a bit. Oh, excuse me. Just drop my base there. So again here, I'm just going to dab it with this side of the sculpting tool. Just start giving it a bit of texture. Oh, I know what I'm going to do in a second as well. I'm going to break this long strip up into some smaller strips as well, I think. Now this side of the base down here, I'm just going to leave this completely blank for now. I'm going to build another layer of green stuff up, probably only about say so high. It kind of depends on the figures you've got to put on. Obviously you can build it higher if you've got a model with a foot off the ground, but I'm probably going to try and just do a thin layer, raise it up a little bit and just give it a little bit of a 3D effect on the base, so they're not all absolutely level to the ground. I just bash the tiles a little bit. It's not making a bit of texture. If you look at it, you can't really see it, but it is there and it will get picked up by any washes we do on these later. Right, let's just try and neaten these lines up. I've got a bit of a wobble there where I've flattened it down. Just keep pushing them in. This is why patterns are slightly harder, because you need to kind of try and keep your pattern a bit neat. Tidy. Now, again, we can add some damage. Oh, I'm going to do some carve outs these first. So again, just work into them a little bit, try and get some lines. Yeah, some sort of tiles that are just a little bit old. You don't need to go overboard with your texturing. You're going to wash over these, you're going to highlight over these. That'll pick it all up really, really easily. You just need some subtle texture, so these are not all kind of very slightly rounded green stuff blobs, because that just looks messy. Unless, of course, you're doing cobblestones. I'll show you a technique for cobblestones later. There we go, pretty simple like that. I'll pick this tile over here and we'll crack a corner off it. Like that. Just a kind of slightly rounded corner off. Push this down a little. We'll add some damage to one down here, just like that. Again, just using the other end of the sculpting tool to poke some texture onto it. Doesn't need to be deep, it just needs to be very gentle, and I found this sort of thing just picks up the washes nicely. You'll get slightly darker patches and welts and things. It not only pushes a little hole in it, but it also pushes a little dip around the hole, and then as we smooth it off a little bit, it just softens those so they're not really sharp pricks. One thing I've found is don't stab in the same direction all the time. You need to turn your sculpting tool so you're stabbing in slightly different directions. Move your tool around, make sure it's all in different ways. This here I'm going to cut there and there. Make these look like some sort of edging tile. Just run that way, keep it that way, nice and deep, like that. So I'm just concentrating for a second. Let's smooth this off. I've made a bit of right hash of this. So when I raise it up, I think I'll drop some sand over that just to clean it up a little bit. And make it just hide that line. The other option, obviously, is turning that into a bit of detail. So making it a little deeper, maybe stretch it this way and that way. It's a bit of a crack in the tile. Actually, that works pretty well. So battle damage, always easy excuse. Just make that look like it's a tile started disintegrating and collapsing, and destroyed down here. There we go, and again we'll just jab it a few times with the other end. I think he's looking pretty good. It's looking fairly square. I'm just going to square this one up a little bit more. And once it's got paint on, these will come out beautifully. So that's the first part of that. I'll be back a little later on and I'll build another layer up here and we'll sculpt a second layer on top of this. Right, I am back with the second part of the video for this little diamond pattern base. I already mixed up some green stuff for it. I'm going to build a second layer on this side and a row of edging curbstones or something like that with a little bit of another flagstone pattern on this side. I'm just going to gauge how much green stuff I need. So that's probably enough for now. So put this on top the base and just do our best to smooth it out now. I will roll this in a sec. I'm just going to try and edge this out a little bit. Now there will be a decision to make in a second as to how sharp we want this edge around here, but for now we'll just start working on it. That's about covered, and just roll it out a little bit, try and get it a bit smoother. We can go over this side a little bit because we're going to carve that back down in a second. So just go over there. That's pretty good. That'll do there. So that's built over, and we're going to very carefully cut along this line here, like that. And then we'll just lift off this bit here. Not wanted to come off today, just give me a moment. I think this first layer is unfortunately not quite dry yet, but it's close enough. There we go. So as you can see, we've got a reasonably solid edge there. We are a little thicker on the centre than this side, but that's not awful. Yeah, that's pretty even all the way through. I think I'm relatively happy with that. So I'm just getting some more, a little tub of water. So we've got to slowly work our way around here now and just try and follow the base. I think we're going to do quite a little bit of a raised edge. So we'll just try and cut this away very slowly. Try and keep the shape of that curve matching the base, so we don't really have anything overhanging on this side. Same on this side, just cut there, there. That's probably it. I reckon that's about the same curve. I'm not going to measure this. It doesn't need to be exact. It just needs to be broadly the right shape so it doesn't look funny. I'll just work this up a little bit. There we go, we've got a little bit of a step and we've started to smooth off the edge. So if I get the other side of the sculpting tool, just run this around the edge so you can see I've got plenty of water on here. Keep it nice and smooth. Work this around a few times. Just like that, and then same on the top. Sharpen that edge right up, same across this way. That edge is getting nice and sharp. There we go. Now hide the join between the two just by smoothing the putty back and forward over it a few times. I'm pretty happy with that. Just a little bit sticking out over there. Just spin that around. Just got to work this in a little bit. I've got some putty on my finger there. It's just annoying me slightly. All my spare putty I just chuck in a little pile and out of the way, and I'll do something else with it in a little bit. I think that's a pretty good raised area, so a little bit more smoothing. We will just sharpen all these up I'm not too worried about a little bit of variance in the size and shape at all. After all, as I said on previous videos, these are not nice modern clean streets. Obviously you can spend as much time cleaning up as you like. I am quite often a perfectionist, so I have to be a little careful that I don't go overboard on this all the time. Now I want to try and get a similar layer to that on this side, so we'll do there. That should do it. So I'm not going to cut too deeply here. Cut along there like that, and then I'm also going to cut a little bit down the edge here and carry the detail over to the side a little bit. This just helps it look a little less like you've got a very, very sharp kind of just nothing on the edge of the base. Just carry the detail over a little bit. Just wipe that. Oh, sorry. No, and I've just, there you go, fatal error there. Dropped it, grabbed it, ruined that edge. So I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Again, all the way around. Fingers and thumbs tonight. That's not awful. So just, again, a little bit of water on it. Fix that mistake nicely. A little bit extra putty there. Just push it in, clean round. See what I mean by being a perfectionist? I tell you to do it roughly, and I'm here messing about with it. So that's pretty good. Now I think I'm going to offset the marker between the flags by just setting it between these two here. So we'll have a little line there, and then again I will also just push that in there. I have absolutely no idea if they have curbstones in Venice or anywhere medieval, but you know, I think that was pretty cool. And then on the top here we're going to go back to our random flagstone pattern to kind of match the rest of the bases. So this is obviously a base that's in a slightly posher quarter. So I'll just pull a line across here, and then the same again. I'm going to go down a little line vertically on that side there. And then we'll go line down there, and then actually it's going to be a bit more regular than the other ones by the look of it, but it'll do. It'll be fine. Not really much space to do a big irregular pattern on this. I've also got to watch out because you can just see, actually you can see the yellow hit here. I've got a little bit of uncured resin underneath, which I've failed to dig out when I was mixing it. I do normally try and pick it out. I've had obviously a batch here of Greenstuff that's a little too old and has a bit too much in it. So almost every time I mix it, I'm getting lumps and shapes in it, which is a little frustrating for videos like this, but it's fine. I'm fairly sure I bought this Greenstuff a couple of years back. It's been sat in a very large pile of modelling gear. Probably wasn't used for much of last year when I was moving house, so it's just kind of gone off a little bit down the middle. I'll pick some next time I'm at a show or something like that, which will be, I think, end of this month, I think. And that's just the same as I've done on previous videos, just starting to texture this up a little bit, tapping it around back and forward with all the different sides of the kind of spatula end of the sculpting tool. Just try and edge it, and then I'm going to tighten this edge up again. Now I've bashed it a bit, and then the same again in a minute. I'll just also jab a little bit here and there, just to give it that texture that I've just noticed on some of these bases I sprayed up earlier. I've jabbed it a little too hard and I've created little nooks and a bit sticking up, so I might just have to run a scalpel over them and just soften them a little bit. So can sharpen this edge up right the way down there. I do actually want this quite sharp and clean. There we go. Just helps delineate the base a little bit there. And again, we're going to work a bit of detail. So I'm not sure I explained this much on the previous video. So what I'm doing here, I'm just pushing down a little bit to start creating a ridge. So just pushing in that action, starting to create a little ridge in the tile. There you go, you can see it better there. And then working it right to the edge. These are kind of carved stone or something like that. That aren't very neatly carved or have been worn away by walking or water running over it, whatever else. It's just to kind of represent that. I just find it catches shades and washes really, really nicely, and just gives you a slightly uneven surface to work across. Too much water there. It's just a bit more texture than the random jabbing that we did a moment ago. Just clean that bit up there. And then I suspect we'll crack one of these tiles as well, so we'll have this one here. Just work into it with a fracture coming out to the edge. So there. And down the side a little bit. I'm not going to go all the way down the bottom of this side, I think just to there. Just to show the flag's cracked, maybe not all the way through yet. A bit coming out that way. Just try and keep this in the centre for you, so I keep forgetting where the camera is tonight. This is all a little new to me, trying to do this sort of thing, so I'm doing my best to try and keep it central and neat and visible for you guys at home. And, as I've done before, so I'm just pushing the putty back in over towards the crack, just easing it over, and that's starting to square up those edges along the crack and just helps create a slightly less soft appearance to it. Makes it feel a little deeper, makes it feel a bit more like an actual crack rather than a kind of natural bevel going round. And I'll just pull that a little bit out a little bit more as well. There's a few different techniques you can use when you do cracks and shapes in Greenstuff. You can just wait for it to be a little drier. So you let your Greenstuff dry for a little while. So that's my phone going off and right in front of me. And if the drier, the firmer putty sometimes gives you a slightly easier way to make a sharper edge. There's also a product called Brownstuff, which I've not seen. I used to have a roll of it somewhere, which is basically the same as Greenstuff. It's a two-part epoxy putty, but it's brown. It's a lot firmer, shapes up and creates much sharper edges. It's quite good for weapons and things like that. I'm relatively comfortable with that. So there we go. That's the second part of the kind of two-layer base. So this lower layer is mostly dry. It's not quite fully dry, but it's pretty much there. It's not a huge difference in height. You can see there it's only a couple of millimeters at most, and that just gives you either the ability to put a figure with a foot up here and a foot down there, instead of a foot sideways. You can always bring this forwards a little bit and have them stood on a higher layer and maybe more detail on the top than the bottom. But yeah, just another interesting base. I'll add it to the collection. And as I say, I often, if I'm doing other jobs and I've got spare Greenstuff, so like this bit here, that's probably half a base's worth, I'll slap that on a spare base I've got kicking around. I've always got bags of bases kicking around. I just sculpt a base and chuck it aside, and next time I need a base for something for Carnivale or Pulp Games, Marvel, Batman, whatever else I happen to be painting and collecting that week, I've got some kind of pre-sculpted bases I can just slap some figures on. It makes life a little easier. So there we go, that's the end of this tutorial. I'm not sure if I'm going to do more. I might do another one or two, just different methods of creating texture on these bases. Thanks for watching, goodbye.